1999. I have 3 kids, and they're 17, 14, and 11. I guess I call myself an environmentalist activist, more of a recreationalist as well. I don't know, recently I've had a really renewed interest. I don't know, I went from just walking the lake when I wanted to go to just going crazy exploring Bowen recently. So,
Trails.
Trails. I'm just like on a mission to find every single trail I can find.
Get Jeremy.
So
well, you've come to the right shop.
Yeah. So and it's be interesting to find out what you guys do here. So thank you for inviting me and letting me come in and join.
Yeah.
So.
No, well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And this will be a, it's Parks, Trails, and Greenways Committee is an active bunch, so we've got a couple of walkabouts to schedule, and we tried this last year too. Of course, it made it snow.
Yeah. So one way Christmas, schedule a walkabout.
A bunch of times, so yes, we can use caution, but this will be quite a big meeting, so I better get going. But welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And
I get to do their names.
yeah, that's what I thought. We could just go around quickly. I'm not exactly following the agenda, but you want to start, DG?
Yep, so I'm DG, Dorothy Grace, just in case you were wondering.
That's what it is.
Dorothy Grace. Yeah, Dorothy Grace. And as I said, I've got a background in environmental consulting, biology, environmental education, and I do project management for ecological stewardship right now.
Yeah.
And I've been on this committee since whenever it was. When did we start?
Trying to work out when it was.
We're trying to figure that out.
Originally back in the mid-90s with the OCP, forging the OCP.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yes.
Mark. I used to work in the Parks Department for the municipality and have been interested in trails and environmental issues.
Yeah.
I've been on the committee for less than a year now. 8 months, 10 months, maybe? Maybe even less.
But he used to come and listen, so that
Yeah.
counts for something.
I did, right
Yeah,
there.
he was out there.
And
Mr.
Pina.
I'm Sue Ellen, and I've been involved with municipal things, trails, parks, conservancy, and ecological stuff since I moved to the island, which was back in like 90 or 91. Anyway,
Cool.
But not too much for the first few years because I was busy having a son too. Go ahead, Bonnie.
And I'm Bonnie, and I know you two are sort of from about, and I have an 11-year-old daughter as well. So, I'm the manager of Parks and Environment here, and I'm not a voting member, so it's not that I'm not paying attention, I just don't put my hand up for any of the votes that you have as a committee. I'm here to answer questions and to present things that are applicable. And we've been working on a parks plan since 2015, so really long coming. I think we're getting closer and closer, and hopefully early in the new year we'll have it adopted by council, like by February. That's my goal. So and then we can start implementation. Probably with a trail master plan of some sort, maybe picking out some projects. So that's really, it's great timing that you came on board. And there's more members of the committee, they're just not here tonight. So there's more people to meet. There's how many? There's 11. 10.
Yeah.
I'm Christine Miller, and this thing has been on the island since 1980, so way back. I'm involved with Bihora, which was the horse organisation on the island, and that's really my main interest. Trails from the point of view of riding horses, to always keep that first and foremost, in my mind anyway, and make sure it doesn't get overlooked. Apart from that, I don't really have any expertise.
Knows all the trails.
A long history of what we've done before and hasn't worked. So, yeah.
Oh, I brought some of that today.
Jeremy Howe, I've been here since '82, and just have a long history of interest in trails and bushwhacking and so on. And I've been on the Trails Committee back in the 90s. Oh, well, actually with Christine, when it was first formed as an advisory group to the OCP.
Before there was a municipality.
Exactly.
When we were
Yeah.
Islands Trust
And
trustees.
was happy to discover that trails have consistently been the most significant thing in Islanders' minds in terms of recreation,
Right.
all through that time to the present.
Very good. Okay, and there's more members. We'll get them to introduce themselves later. We've also got Daniel at the back, and he can introduce himself when he comes. But he's one of our planners on Bowen, and he'll introduce a couple of big topics for you to sink your teeth into. And here comes Claudia.
Great.
And this is and this is Claudia. You guys know each other?
We do.
Very good. So we won't do the introduction, then I'll just keep going. So if we could look at the minutes, I'm glad to have you here. At the agenda. Yeah, sorry. Anybody got anything to add to the agenda?
We have 2 on-table items, which are the Creek Walkabout map. So, beautiful.
The two beautiful.
Made by Carla.
They are nice, yeah.
Gorgeous.
Very good.
I'd like to just raise a comment about the parks plan under new business.
Okay. Or maybe continuing business. Where can we get that? I
So
think.
5.2. This is summarizing.
Okay. Unless it comes up earlier. 5.2 park plan. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Christine and Mark. Anybody in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor? Thank you. Yes. You're getting ahead of me. I was going, what? Want to add something? Okay. All right. So let's look at the minutes. I found my notes. Couldn't find them for a bit, so it took me a while. There may be some things that were missed there.
So it looks like Mark's got some
Yeah,
stuff
what have
to
you got
say.
there, Mark?
On page 3 of 6, the first one, the first paragraph, this is kind of a busy one. Parks plan and associated maps will be followed by implementation and creation. It really should be creation and implementation, just an order thing, I think.
Okay.
The last full paragraph on the page, the parks plan consultation process that this project would include scope termination. What is
Oh,
scope?
determination.
Okay. Cool. I was
No
wondering
more
if
scope.
it was a typo or it was like we're ending this. Wow. Okay. Page 4 of 6. The Kate's Lane easement, is that supposed to be the Kate's Kill easement?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So
And it links Village Drive and not Village Square to Stephen Place?
Village Drive to see.
All right. That's all.
Awesome.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? I think I got it. Yes, it was linking to Seaview, right? Does that need to be in there? Or-
Yeah, it links to Stephen Place.
Okay, that's okay. All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Or the minutes? Thank you, Mark. And Christine, all in favor? Okay. Nobody's opposed. That's great. Thank you very much. And now we're going to move to public comments, except nobody from the public is here, so we'll just skip right on to Daniel, so he can go home and be with his family. He's got 2 big referrals for us today.
Okay, so first today I'm going to talk to you about a rezoning. So I'm Daniel Martin, I'm the planner here, so I come here periodically, mostly when something is referred by council to the committee that has to do with land use planning. So the first thing that I'm here to talk to you about is a rezoning application we've received for 391 Salal Road. So it starts on page 12 of your agenda, is the council report, and then the presentation I gave to council then starts on page 18. But so for those who don't know, Salal Road is sort of opposite Josephine Lake. And Salal Road is obviously on the other side of the road. So
It's over here, if you want to have a look. Josephine Lake, Solero Road is somewhere in there.
yeah.
So we're sort of talking about. Okay.
So the property itself, currently under the current zoning and OCP designation, is too small to subdivide. So it's about 2.5 acres, 2.5 hectares in size, and the minimum size is a 2-hectare minimum lot size, so they can't subdivide any smaller. And they would like to subdivide it into 2 lots. So to do that, they would need to change their zoning and their OCP designation. So one of the things that we look at, and sort of council expects and community expects through rezoning is sort of some sort of community amenity. So that's how, as I'm sure you know, many of our trails and many of our parks come about as part of the rezoning process. And so one of the things that we flagged when we just did the review of the application is that in our OCP map, so Schedule E of the OCP is the one that outlines trails and parked, it has little bubble areas for where we want parks, and it has dotted lines where we want trails. So in the OCP map at that time, it shows this trail line running right through, and that's figure 4, so on page 15, right through the middle of that property that's on Solwell Road. So it said that was a desired trail connection. So one of the things we talked with the applicant about is the idea of, okay, as part of your application, we would expect, you know, like a trail dedication and probably land, not just the trail itself, but land on each side to have some sort of buffer. But when we came to council, basically what I wanted was to come to this committee to say, is this something that we still want? Because I know it's in the OCP schedule showing this trail route. I'm not sure it's in the parks plan trail linkages, it's not. So it's sort of, is this something that we're still desiring to look for a trail connection here? And then second part is where the OCP map shows this trail go through sort of in the middle of the lot, and is that still the desired location, or could it be, you know, the far southern end of the lot instead of, if we're sort of looking at, if it's a 2.5 hectare property, they're looking to rezone to have a 1 hectare minimum lot size, and sort of look at it and go, okay, well maybe, you know, it'd be a trail, but also with like a significant park buffer around it, so it wouldn't just be like a trail with a fence on each side, it would actually be a larger piece of land that could be maybe in the middle of the property or in the southern end. So that's really all I think that I had, other than, right, so we currently have an existing statutory right-of-way that was registered on the property to the south of this one.
Was you on page 16?
So this is on page 16, yes, thank you. And so that was put in, I don't believe a trail was ever built to connect at that point Solwell to the Crown, and then to come down on it back again to Forest Ridge on the other side. But I know looking at our, I don't think I included it here, on our GIS map, where these two trail bricks come out is flagged as a wetland area in our riparian map. So I'm not sure how much on the ground, but so I sort of look at that, maybe that's an opportunity we'd actually get a wider swath, and then we have some flexibility of where the trail is done to connect that, where it actually comes out isn't necessarily right at that point.
Yeah, okay. I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One, so these other, on page 16, these existing SROW, that means something right away? Statutory right away? So those are places where a trail could have been built, and which one is their actual property on this?
On this, they would be Strata Lot 2, so just to the north of it.
Oh, okay, the one that says SL2.
Yeah,
Strat
exactly.
plan, okay. So, this one.
Yeah.
So there's actually sort of potential trail right-of-ways already through there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I was wondering, since you're here,
Yep.
I was thinking, you know, we do have, I'll just show it on this big map. We do have, here's Crippen Park, the meadow, the festival field.
Not the meadow though, you mean Bowfest Field?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's right. And Bowfest Festival Field, and then this first park is Davies Park, or whatever you want to call it, it's on the hill, right? And where the mailboxes are down here, and then,
That's Case Hill
Yeah.
Park.
We call it
Natural
Kingsville
Park.
Nature Park.
okay. And then, somewhere here is Singing Woods, is that?
That's
It's almost
along-
adjacent to
yeah,
Case
along
Hill
the-
Nature
yeah.
Park.
No, I'm looking at a different map, so excuse me.
yeah,
So coming through here, and then this is a piece of, where's that little piece of park?
the little triangle.
The Davies
Yeah.
Park.
Davies Park.
Is that? See here? No, that's right down at the road. Oh, here it is, here. So right
Yeah.
here, okay? So we have another potential greenway that comes up from this side of Sun Cove, up through and or around Singing Woods, because I think that's what your current management plan is now, right? But we did do there are other ways through that neighborhood. This little piece of park. And then we're into these Grafton Lakelands, which are under development, right? So if you remember, we walked around there last year, and we were looking at trails. There are trails that go through this high end. So I would offer that we're already halfway across the island with another greenway on this side, another trail linkage greenway. It would have to go through the subdivision, but we found our way through there. There will be trails through Grafton, and then ecological reserve. So we would have to come down and around, and this is the piece of crown. So all we have really between us is 1 or 2 lots, or come down to the road, or both. And then you could come down this way and, I don't know, possibly come through this piece of crown and be down on our way to the golf course, something, right? So this is part of the way we have traditionally done trail planning on greenways, planning on Bowen, seeing what connections can we make, what's partly happening already. And you'll get very familiar with these maps and things. It'll take a while, but hang in there, Terry. And because I'm going to pass this one around. This is a, yeah, you can see the lot on there. This is Josephine Lake and some of the parks and riparian zones around it. So you can see from a wildlife perspective, it's actually more connected. Because I think that the lot must be this one up here? No.
I think it's this one.
Yeah, that one, that curvy
Yep.
one. Yeah. So
And is this the wetland that we're talking about, that Danny was referring to?
it might be. I didn't have time to make a color copy. But just keep sending it around and we can talk, yeah?
What are the green areas?
Covenanted, I would guess.
Either
that was the covenant
covenanted
area?
or riparian
Yeah.
or,
Because all the way around the lake is
Right.
covenanted
Yeah.
for no development, right?
yeah, yeah. So there's sort of the
So
people
that's-
walking
that
trails
would be
and then there's
statutory
the
right away, probably.
wildlife and the spores and the seeds and the birds. Claudia?
Daniel, I was wondering, you mentioned that it wouldn't just be the trail width, but maybe
Yeah.
a wider buffer zone. Are there any precedents, like what kind of area might council be willing to ask for in regards to allowing this to go through against the OCP as it currently is zoned?
There's precedences on Bowen. Sort of sometimes every case ends up being different in terms of, it might be looking on the site and be like, okay, what do you need to make a usable lot? But sort of when I look at the math and I say, okay, they're asking to go to a 1 hectare minimum lot size for the subdivided half, and they're about 2.5 hectares. I say, okay, there's half a hectare, that's about an acre of land that, in theory could be done to make a nice buffer and sort of
So it could be
protect
kind
it.
of a wideish band, and
Mhm.
which is better, as I understand from Bonnie, in that, well, and probably you guys, some of you do, the narrower you have, if you have a narrow forested band, half the trees blow down. Whereas if it's wider, it's more.
Yeah,
robust.
in terms of precedents with rezoning, like Grafton, it's like 50 or 60% of the land becomes park.
Yeah.
Some of the ones on Sunset that I often look to, so like the Headwaters rezoning, I think it's like half of it.
Yeah,
Um,
they're all 50%.
Yeah, the Burgess was probably like 40% where the Ready Kitchen is now.
Yeah.
And Susan Proctor as well, I think was about 50.
Yeah.
So
Christine?
Yeah, I guess we're going on a walkabout, so we would see that
Mhm.
are there restrictions, with regards to the,
Yeah.
are there obvious places where it would work and wouldn't work? Is that going to be a factor?
yeah, so I think that is, and that's what I'd love to,
Okay.
do a site visit with the Parks
And
Service,
also
with their
just to
expertise to see.
Test out the 2 existing right-of-ways, like,
Yeah.
are they enough?
Mhm.
Maybe it doesn't, maybe another one wouldn't be of value to the community. Jeremy?
I see 2 things here. In relation, I actually talked to John Lord recently about this, and apparently the easterly right-of-way is kind of never been formally
Yeah,
made.
yeah.
It's completely obscure. Nobody would ever know that it wasn't private land. So that needs to be defined. But there's an obvious link between the 2 roads in the sense of a neighborhood connection.
Yep.
And that's kind of logical. But the link to the surveyed crown lands, as I see them, those crown lands are kind of isolated in the sense that they're bounded either by private lands or the ecological reserve, which we're not supposed to go into. Of course, that wouldn't stop it. No, but I mean, you know what I mean, yeah. In the sense that possibly future passage along the border of the ecological reserve to make links, for example, to this Seymour Bay, Queen Charlotte Heights Trail. those all make sense, and those crown lands, like why couldn't we sort of go there if there's interesting things? I don't have a lot of experience in those, just many years ago. I remember crossing through them and led a nature hike through them. There's a lot of sort of mature Douglas firs I remember in there, but I think the most obvious thing is the link between the two roads as a neighborhood trail. That it goes through Crown Lands is meaningful for future whatevers.
Yeah.
But if there is a swamp there, then the constraints of topography obviously are going to be pretty. Those should be determining. I mean, you can, like, who wants to disturb a swamp if you can avoid it.
Well, let's set up a walkabout to take a look at that on the land. But thank you, and also for the picture view, because you're right. We're looking into the future, not just next year, but 50 years, possibly longer.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Just a question, if in the agreement there's a trail, there's a dedication through the middle of the property, would they take back the statutory right away? Would we lose
So that's on
that?
the neighboring property itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it borders their property in terms of like where you see it.
Right.
The northern end of it is their property line essentially.
Okay. How wide is it? Do you know?
I think is it 3 meters?
What does it say?
See, that's another option. Jen, make it
was
wider.
thinking of 3 meters.
Depending on where.
What makes sense?
Yeah, if it's wet there, I mean, that's where I would want to make sure that we put the trail in a place that makes sense for a trail, not makes sense for the subdivided property, you know, like from the lens I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
You know? So
And
that-
also, if we can protect the wetland, if there's a wetland or whatever. So we need to go on a walkabout, I think, as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody got any other questions for Daniel about it before we move on to the
And do
next
we
one?
have a date scheduled for that walkabout?
Not yet.
So I'll send a doodle poll because we also want to involve the Recreation Commission as well, because we're collaborative groups and collaborative municipality. So if I can get a general sense of availability, I can send a doodle poll out. Thinking Sundays is working for you guys.
Was there something already scheduled for January
Yes.
6th or something? And what's that one?
Lee Creek walkabout, that's
Lee
related to
Creek.
these.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know when we're scheduling this other one.
9:30.
That's a Saturday, 9:30 in the morning. And so the other, what we've often done in this committee, and I don't know how it would work with you, Terry, is we've often done Friday afternoons, depending on the time.
Weekends work better for me.
Do they now?
Yeah.
Okay. And
In the summer when it's light out later, then that'd be fine.
yeah, that's right. We tend to, last year we had trouble with this anyway because of the daylight. Because we've got 3 walkabouts on our plate, so why don't we set out
Saturday,
Doodle
Sunday, okay.
Saturday, Sunday for the 13th, 14th, 20th, and 21st, and see where that gets us for the other 2 of them. That gives us 3 in January. You realize we're setting ourselves up for the snow again.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, okay. And then the second thing Daniel's brought for us is a little different, and I don't know if people had a chance to look at this, but this is our first ever draft subdivision and services bylaw. Somebody else out there?
So this is our draft subdivision servicing bylaw. So the municipality has had a draft subdivision servicing bylaw since incorporation. We've never had an adopted subdivision servicing bylaw, so this is an exciting step for us. So on page 11, there's a background, just a little overview, 1 page, and then the bylaw itself starts on page 27. So for those who don't know, just some background in terms of general land use planning and stuff, so subdivisions in BC are done by somebody called the approving officer, and that's somebody who's appointed by council, but then it's an independent authority to make decisions on subdivisions. And so for us, that's Kathy, our CAO, is also our approving officer, and Judy McLeod is the planning consultant, who's the deputy approving officer. So they have independent decision making on subdivisions, and they look at the layouts, and there's sort of legislative stuff that they look at to consider. One of which is, does it meet zoning, is sort of the most basic. Does your lot size work? But then it's sort of, they can consider the layouts and, is it in the municipality's interest for this subdivision?
It's a little different in that council doesn't get involved in subdivisions usually, and usually advisory groups don't get involved either.
Yeah.
And over the years, this has led to some challenges, like places where the trail is too narrow to get around a corner with a horse, for example, or where there's the trail has a jog in it and then there's the stairs, or funny little things where things don't line up. So now this document may help us be a bridge for some of those issues. Would that be correct?
It's a little complicated. So in terms of, I've laid out here, there's a number of sort of policies and bylaws that the municipality can have that guide an improvement officer and guide subdivisions. So I talk about, obviously, the land use bylaw lays out minimum lot sizes, average lot sizes. It lays out in the land use bylaw too. We have some regulations about lot sizes or shapes and stuff. The official community plan has policies in it. So one of them that's key that every municipality generally has is something about park land dedication. So if you're subdividing more than 5 lots that are, unless they're all 10-acre lots like your brother heard of, you need to provide 5%, either 5% of the land or 5% of the value of the land as park. So either as park land or park dedication. And if there's a policy in your OCP, it means you get to choose. And that's sometimes where the improvement officer will refer it to council for advice on whether we want it. But then the way that the law is written is it's the municipality's choice. So I don't know always, Bowen has been as strong in that, but in theory you could say, we want 5% of the land and we want the waterfront land, thank you very much. I don't mind that it's, more valuable. I don't want the cliff, I don't want the... But so that's what's laid out in the official community plan, and then that's guided by other master plans, such as the Parks Master Plan. So that's a key one in terms of where it says, this is where we need parks, this is where we need trails, and that's something that a improvement officer, when they review a subdivision, they can look at and say, okay, we need a trail here and we need a park here, because that's what the community's asked for. So this is what we're doing. So what the subdivision servicing bylaw is it's a technical document, and it lays out minimum standards for works and services undertaken by a developer at time of subdivision. So it's laid out in the Local Government Act what we can do with it. So it permits the municipality to regulate and prescribe minimum standards for the dimensions, locations, alignments, and gradients of roads through the subdivision of land. It requires that roads, sidewalks, boulevards, street lighting, wiring, and other services be located and constructed in accordance.
This is page 11.
This is page 11. The standards set out in the bylaw, and it can require that within a subdivision, a water distribution system, fire hydrant system, sewage collection disposal system, stormwater drainage system is provided, constructed, and located in accordance with the standards of the bylaw. So it's really the tool that we say, okay, if there's going to be a road that runs through it, and we've decided that this is an accepted place for a road, and it's going to be a municipal road. The subdivision servicing bylaw then says, okay, the road is going to be this wide, it's going to have a roadside trail, or if you're in an urban place, it has sidewalks on both sides or sidewalks on one side. It has the wiring is above ground or it's underground. So that's what it does. It sort of lays out, and then it lays out ways in which you can do it. So in a subdivision, you can do it. Some developers, you can do it so you do it all up front, and then you get your subdivision approved. Or you can do what's called a works and servicing agreement, and that's an agreement you lay out with the municipality and the developer, and you take a deposit for it, and you say, okay, we'll approve your subdivision, but you have to do the works, and if you don't do it, we'll use your money and we'll finish it for you. So the subdivision servicing bylaw lays out what a works and service agreement is as well. So what specifically, we sort of brainstorming thinking, okay, what's most relevant for the Parks and Trails and Greenways committee? So one of the things that I flagged is Schedule C4 of the bylaw. It talks about storm drainage. So the schedule, I'm trying to find the page.
68 of 139, page 42.
So that's something that we haven't had. We've had sort of guidelines for storm drainage before. And so this is, they're newer standards than we've had in the past, and we're trying to outline standards to mitigate hazards and damage to adjoining properties.
So at the bottom of page 42, you'll see parks and open spaces, right? Which is also page 68 of 139, depending on which way you're looking at it. And so what it says, if I'm reading this rightly, Daniel, is that same as those under residential multifamily, so in parks and around any park buildings or parking lots or areas where you would need storm drainage, for example, Quarry Park, but I'll get into that in a minute. Exceptional best management practices is what a BMP is that right? To achieve performance targets would be these disconnected, I don't know what it is, what is a disconnected roof downspout? Well, I guess we'd have to look that up. Anybody know?
Yeah, it's just where they have the downspout and then then I think the intent is then the water disperses on site
And
rather
soaks in.
than.
It's not connected to a storm sewer.
Right.
Yeah.
A storm
Gotcha.
sewer.
Not go to.
Gotcha. And then rain gardens and bioswales, again, places where the water can soak into the ground, right? Recharge areas.
Yep.
Some of these were things that what was it you were talking about last time, Mark?
Soil cells.
Soil cells, we might want to add that. Porous parking surfaces, right? Sand filters, filter strips, stormwater treatment, wet ponds. I don't know what the difference is between those two. Stormwater, does anybody know? Wetlands and wet ponds?
I think the wet ponds are more
They wouldn't
flashy,
have
right?
emergent
Yeah.
plants.
Yeah, they just sort of take the overflow
Right,
and then,
Probably, yeah.
and then it evaporates or
Yeah.
whatever.
Water retention.
Whereas-
It doesn't
yeah,
stay as
whereas
a
wetland is obviously more of a
permanent wet.
And it could be a
permanent
depth.
wet.
A depth
Vegetated.
definition too, like
Right.
wetlands are only 4 meters really, because that's where the light penetrates to, and
Okay.
deeper water.
So I have a question just on basic and oil. So where is basic defined?
So basic is the previous page,
Oh, okay.
4.1. So 0.1 talks about what basic control is and oil control is versus enhanced control.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
I think I'm missing what is TSS. I forgot.
Total suspended solids.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good. With this,
I think that needs to be spelled out.
I know.
That's my God.
Hey, join the emergency committee. You should see
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, or as I call them, TLAs, 3-letter acronyms. Anyway, I was wondering about this one. Regarding parks, we have had a park that was a reclamation project, and that's Quarry Park, which was basically a quarry, a soil quarry site. It was just mud. And so with that one of the things that we installed to handle the stormwater, because we were afraid of erosion actually taking down the slopes and washing away
Yeah.
the trails and everything, was a sediment pond, which I saw somewhere else, I think later in the document, but we do have one there down below the little waterfall in Quarry Park, and I thought we might want to add that to this list. Especially if we do any more kind of reclamation or restoration projects. And I think we also had one in the Singing Woods, wasn't there one? There used to be what we called a silt pond in Singing Woods Nature Reserve, not a municipal property, but still, it was down at the bottom of that steep logging road that came down. That's the trail they're decommissioning now, and I think both of them, both Singing Woods and Quarry Park, I think, have been dug out at least once, like the silt has been removed.
Yeah, I know where that is, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a big berm.
yeah.
Right.
So I would add somewhere else in the document, it's called a sediment pond, I think beside roads or something.
Yeah.
And seeing as how we've used them already. And also at Quarry Park, I don't know what the technical term would be for this, but in terms of managing stormwater, we've used straw bales in the new ditches and drainage areas to slow down the water and to soak up some of the water, but mostly to slow it down so it didn't erode gullies. And I don't know what that would be called. And we also used plantings. We planted vegetation. And we used whatever that matting is called. It's sort of a straw layer and you roll it out in a plastic netting. So it's like 2 layers of plastic netting with
Yeah.
the biomass.
Coconut
and,
fiber, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't coconut, it was straw, but same principle. Some kind, I don't know what the technical term is for that kind of slope retention temporary mat, something like that. And then we sprinkled seed over it and it worked beautifully, you know. But anyway, these are things we used in restoration projects. Sometimes parks are kind of reclaiming bits after, maybe Quarry Park was a one-off, but I would think that there are other parks that have had a lot of impact, Seymour Bay maybe being one, and where we might want to use some of these terms, so. You got them?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody else got anything else?
So, I see that Parks and Open Spaces includes parking lots, so I'm just wondering why the oil control is not included if parking lots are included in this.
I think it's because it's they're usually like the festival field or like the.
Well, but it says parking lots.
Yeah.
That's the same too, DG, on commercial employee daily parking. They just have basic, and suspended salt.
While you guys are looking at that, Daniel, can I draw your attention to the word railroads in industrial on page 68 of 139? The word railroad is used twice.
Railroad yards.
And railroad yards and at the top, railroad equipment. And I thought if you took it out, people might take the whole thing more seriously as a goal.
You don't expect us to have rail?
Yeah, never know.
Not even in a.
Clear that miniature train and it's on fire.
Well, that's just as by the by. Bonnie?
I just want to know, Daniel, if maybe you've looked at it, or if the engineers that drew up this bylaw about the Gibsons, like, because Gibsons has done so much work, and they have such great data on, really promoting the green solutions as opposed to the manufactured or the engineered.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost savings, they're starting to come up with some really good numbers. And I just, when I read the bylaw, it's really very much engineering. It's one lens, because whenever you get one profession writing something, you get that lens. And I know there's standards and there's status quo, but I just would be really, I would love, because Gibson's is the same topography, similar topography, similar climate, everything to us. And they've done so much work and they've spent all the money over there, but we, I think that they have some really good ideas.
Well, I mentioned that too. Go ahead, Daniel.
I was going to say, I definitely can look at that. I know largely what this does, especially with it sets targets as opposed to methods. So I'm curious how they've done it.
Yeah.
Because even in this, there could be languages, well, we encourage these things, but then we kind of, I don't know if they have other than policies that sort of double up on that to say.
Because if you're given a choice of a manufactured or an engineered solution, or a natural solution that, there's some data out there that in the long run, the cost savings is amazing. But if you're given the choice, people tend to go with what they know as opposed to a new way of looking at things. And just wondering, maybe this isn't the avenue, but I just know that it's written from that one lens. It's written from an engineering lens.
I looked at the two, Bonnie, particularly around the C4, which is all the stormwater stuff I was looking at further on. And I was thinking, we could use the water balance method, because it's all about, C4, the stormwater stuff, is all about how to shed the water as quickly as possible. Whereas here, you've got residential, commercial, and industrial here, you've got ways to soak it in, but it doesn't really say that, It doesn't really say water recharge or as much water is coming in when you want.
You know what it does?
Stay on site. Did you see that somewhere?
There's two, if I can find
I saw it under
Yeah.
climate change.
13.7. Yeah, there's two little,
Which page?
page 54, 80 of 139, points 13.7 and 13.8. This is the only reference I found to, because one of my points is that it would be nice to see in this bylaw having natural systems as a preferred or even a required
Yeah.
method of
Yeah.
stormwater management.
Yeah.
And this is the only reference that I see in the
Yeah,
whole
the
document.
whole
Yeah.
document.
Yeah.
And
It
it
just
says,
says where required,
Yeah.
We're required.
yes,
groundwater recharge structures shall be designed by.
right.
So it's by a qualified professional engineer, so it's the engineering thing again. So I would really, I think that's a great idea. I was thinking,
Or even
where
if
should
it's
we
an
go?
environmental engineers at least, like, you just stay that. But again, it's that hard, it's that kind of a mindset,
Yeah.
the engineer.
Well, and we saw an example of that in Seymour Bay.
Yeah.
But it was an
Right.
engineering solution in a park that did not work in
No.
a park, yeah.
No.
You know, and just expanding on what Bonnie was talking about in Gibson's, I was reading a lot of the information on their website. You know, I think what kicked it all off for them was they were looking at replacing their infrastructure. They're a small community like we are, and they don't have the money. And they were looking at to replace our infrastructure, our stormwater management, or stormwater systems, like it's $4.1 million or something. So they decided to go with, there's one area that they put it in a wetland. And they spent $15,000 every 4 years to maintain it. And it looks like that's all they'll ever have to do to it. It'll be forever. It's a permanent thing. And it provides habitat and wildlife, but it cleans the stormwater. And it keeps their water, instead of shedding it off-site, it stays on-site, recharges their groundwater table. And it just makes so much sense.
I see, because I think on an island, we don't have the luxury of other water soaking in from bigger mountains around us and coming down to fill our aquifers, you know, underground, or on the surface as snow melt if we were the Fraser River or something. We don't have that. So every drop of water we shed goes off into the salt chuck and is kind of lost. So that's good. Okay.
So I'm getting the impression that maybe the committee would like to recommend that Daniel or staff look at the bylaw in terms of environmental solutions ahead of engineered solutions.
You're saying natural systems as opposed to engineered solutions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have that in a list of specific things in a draft resolution here.
Oh, you're drafting one as we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's quite, and it's not to council, it's to the
Staff.
approving officers, so we
Yeah.
can make it as detailed as you want, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's to council.
It's to council?
Yeah, we referred it.
Yeah, it's to council, because council has to approve the bylaw.
Okay, so do you still want the level of detail then?
Sure.
Okay.
I was just wondering, I'm sorry, I haven't read this really
Yeah.
thoroughly yet, but about like ditches, roadside ditches, because our ditches are, like, I know that they're dangerous if you go into them, when you're driving, but they're such an amazing little habitat, because they're so deep.
Yeah.
And then plants and sedges and shrubs and everything can kind of hide out in there.
Do you know what-
Wetland ditches.
Do you know when we had the ladies came, the judges came from the Communities in Bloom contest a couple of years ago, and I think it might have been last year. And so they're very urban people from Richmond or somewhere. Anyway, a couple of people, nice, lovely people. And they complimented Bowen on our extensive system of rain gardens. And I thought that was charming, because really that's what they are. They're deep enough and they're vegetated enough.
Normally, they're deeper.
You know, and that kind of brings up another point is you can use a stormwater management system and use natural systems and have it as a greenway. Your whole stormwater management system is just a series of bioswales and ponds and deep ditches that slow the water down but also recharge the water table. And you created this greenway and you've solved your stormwater problem and you're saving money.
So this is the kind of thing with the example, what I'm gonna do, I'll volunteer to call Kim Stevens, who's like the head of waterbucket.ca. They're the professional engineers that are promoting new concept of water balance instead of shedding stormwater. And he lives on Bowen, and I went to his session. Anyway, I'll call him and see about examples, and meanwhile, the Gibson's one is a really good example too.
Because
For that.
with the deeper ditches, like, I went to a ecological approaches to roadside vegetation management, and it was an amazing course. And just, you know, our practice, just for example, of dredging out our ditches, but that actually is counterintuitive. Like, you think you're cleaning them out, but you're actually not causing less infiltration. You're hardening. And so, like, as a kid, and probably people can share this, like, I remember playing in the ditches all the time, and there was always tons of grass and stuff in there, and there was very little flooding. Yes, I mean, maybe things have changed quite a bit since then, 50 years ago, but yeah, so it's, you know, with the depth, the deeper ditches, you do get this vegetation, and really, you shouldn't have to go and dredge out all the tailings, I call them, because often, you know, there will be some invasive nasty species in there, and then you're taking them to some other site and all that too. So, yeah, I don't know, but depth of ditches, I think, you know,
That's another whole part that we can look at in there. And I think the green services side will help. And I just want to move us on a little bit because section 8.2, somewhere in there, where is it? Was it on page 11? Somewhere.
Sorry, page 11, because I went in with the Salal Road
Yeah.
application because I misread the file. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay, but somewhere in there, there's a nice little list of the things we should be looking at.
Oh, yeah, it's on page 11. Storm drainage. Before we leave storm drainage, I just had a question about the work in Gibson's. And I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago up in Kelowna, and Gibson's, they gave a presentation on the work they've been doing. And I thought that they really, their first bit in terms of defining the ecological services and how their approach was focused on drainage. And did I get that right? Do you know, Bonnie? Is that, because I think it could be like incredibly helpful. Like, they've done all the work for us.
Yeah, they spent a lot of money on staff and expertise.
And so for drainage, because I think it was their, their stormwater management plan. So
Is this Gibson's again?
this is Gibson's, and it's, I recall they were saying they, so this was just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Kelowna, and they were saying that their final findings on their stormwater basically was due out imminently.
Yes, it is
Really?
imminent, yes.
Like,
Because we sat beside the CEO at the water bucket.
right,
Course that we went to just a little while ago.
they've been busy. He was, what's his name, Manuel or something like that, yeah.
Manuel.
Mhm.
Yeah. And,
Okay.
okay, so we'll look at that. And Steph's got it in the list of things there, and there's a big report coming up like any day. And when their council passes it, or it'll be in their agenda or something.
Mhm.
And so,
It would change what we've got in here fairly significantly, I would think.
It's
Which is-
excellent work.
yes, and which is interesting too, because it reminded me of Cowan Point, some of the earlier plans, which had bioswales and things in them. I don't know how many of them eventually came. I don't know which versions of which plans, but I remember all of them were open. There was no culverts, and there were a bunch of ponds and things. Now, whether those are the ones that are there now, I don't know. And I just think at the time that was sort of forward-looking. Now we've got the text to go with it. And for an island where we do run short on potable water in some watersheds in the summers, I think it might be really important to look at that. Okay. I also want to look at the parts about the multi-use trail. I've got it written down as 8.2. What part is that?
Is that just on page 64 or page 90 is where they should have cross sections of roads? I don't know if that's what you're.
No, there was a nice little bit where it was, you had, it must be in your, somewhere you had, there was a little short piece in the agenda, and it said, the parts that you particularly wanted us to look at.
Oh, yeah, that's page 11, so the next one is C5, Schedule C5 Highway and Street Standards, including Schedule C7 7 supplemental drawings, including footpath drawings, so
Highways
that
and
there
streets
we're
is
doing.
81.
So highways and street standards is, yeah, page 81. And so that says essentially there's different road classifications that we have. And then from those you'd go and you'd say, okay, there's now a cross section for the different roads. So if you need to build
Right.
a trunk road, you'd look to the trunk road cross section.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Right.
what we've done on that is a couple, so the trunk roadway has a multi-use path as part of the cross section on it. So if you were to subdivide along Grafton, Adams, Trunk Road, Grafton Road, Adams Road, to and including Tunstall Boulevard, we would say as part of that road right-of-way, we would want a multi-use path constructed as a way to do that during subdivision.
And that would be along the trunk road, that would be 3 meters?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe reduced by the municipality. I'm on page
Yeah.
82, looking at the C15 table. And at the bottom of the table is multi-use pathway within
Yeah.
Yeah.
road right away, 3 meters. And here, I wanted to surprise Christine with, da-da-da! You remember this?
Yeah.
So this is something Bahora did. I've got another one here for you to look at, Daniel. It's just they were trying to figure out how wide does it have to be?
Yeah.
And in this case, you notice the top one has a bigger horse. That's because the stirrup scratched the car, so they went to a smaller horse to try and figure it in. That's where
Yeah.
that 3 meters kind of comes from. So it looks like it's going to be okay. What do you think, Christine? Is that, am I right?
Yeah, no, that's, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And one of the other things it suggests in the little report that I've kept, I can't remember where, it came with that anyway, but they did even a little video, they staged, this was from a while ago. But one of the things you suggested was new development permit standards minimum, on existing narrow roadsides, we suggest bump outs when possible to allow trail users to wait in the bump out while other trail users pass. And it's sort of, am I interpreting that
Those are
correctly?
really useful, yeah, when something bad is coming through.
Whether it's a dog straining on a leash or a double stroller heading your way or something. So I wondered about the word bump outs and whether you might want to use that. Section 8.2. So if you switch over the page to 58 or 84 of 139, the part that's called pedestrian and cycle paths,
Yeah.
I'm going to beat Christine to this one.
Boy, I haven't read one.
No, it's fine. I just did these few bits that Daniel pointed out. And I said, what if, instead of calling it pedestrian and cycle paths, we just call it paths or multi-use paths? Because later on you get into bicycle paths, equestrian trails are in there.
Yeah, you use different terms, so that would make more sense.
I just wonder if you might just want to call it paths.
Yeah.
Partly to make sure that everything is included in it, because it's easy to use a title like that to say, oh, there's none of that. And then 8.2, it reads, oh no, that's okay. Because then by doing that, you don't exclude horses from the multi-use trails, multi-use paths. And I wanted to say, oh yeah, and then if we move to another section, C6, what is that? That's about planning, I think.
C6 is transportation.
Oh yeah.
It's about doing transportation plans essentially.
Well, we can go on to that in a minute if you want. Anybody else want to say anything else about trails here? It looks like the 3 meters will be wide enough. Mark?
While we're on this page,
Oh yeah.
8.5.
Yeah.
In all cases, the subgrade must be fully grubbed and compacted to 95% standard proctor prior to that position, with a minimum of 150 mils of compacted gravel. Should we include some sort of depth of grubbing? And what type of gravel should it be, like what size? Or do we just go with, in other points that says, approved Bowen Island Trail standards? I mean, there should be some sort of, it just kind of leaves it open.
Yeah.
We've tried sometimes over the years, I know I've seen several, well, maybe it's one draft that's been through the works a few times, draft trail standards. And originally, I think there was provincial park ones or metro ones that we were trying to adapt, and then there was, Don Riley brought in the ones from the province, you know, the Trail Users Association ones. And none of them kind of fit our situation because, well, here's a couple of examples. In some parts of the trail network so far, we have designed single track trails that lead onto boardwalks. It wouldn't meet this minimum standard because we didn't want to put gravel on it. We wanted people to be able to walk right on the earth and step onto the boardwalk in single file. So that's just one of the things I wanted to make sure is we weren't.
And that's why I suggest just kind of leave it at whatever the parks or the
Yeah.
Bowen Island trail standards
Yeah.
are,
Because
with the approval of the Parks and Environment Department. But
Yeah.
I don't think it should be just kind of left up in the air of like, put some gravel down or.
So on
Yeah.
page 98 is the actual design cross-section of a footpath we had included, and it
Yep.
says 150 millimeters of 19 millimeter lineless crushed gravel
Look at that.
on approved subgrade or approved native or imported subbase.
But you see,
But I hear what you're saying about maybe you don't always want gravel. There are, I mean, I think just about all of the standards, there's like, I think there's stuff that there's prelim at the start about like alternative standards or something proposed approved. Because I think you're right, like if you're doing, if it's like a path across a wetland,
yeah,
we're not gonna be like, oh, go and pack gravel, and we're gonna say we want a boardwalk.
right.
Because it.
But I guess my point is sometimes when you get these minimum widths and we get,
Yeah.
15 years in the future when there's a different park manager, for example, or somebody will say, no, it's got, I've seen this happen in park systems, it's gotta be this wide. And you're
Yeah.
going, but we just want it single, this is a place where we want people to walk quietly on bark
Yeah.
mulch because they're gonna listen to the bird song in the marsh.
Yeah.
And they're going, nope, gotta be gravel, so it's a crunch,
Yeah.
and it's very expensive for the very few people that might do it
Yeah.
in that season where it's needed,
So
Anyway,
maybe in this
I-
point, we just refer to whatever trail standards. I mean,
So there's a
Well-
bit of a contrast between 8.4 and 8.5. In 8.4 it says, or any approved Bowen Island Trail standards, and then in 8.5 it says, in all cases
Yeah.
that you're gonna need that subgrade.
Is
So-
there a place in here where it says that paths should be environmentally surveyed before locating and constructing a trail? Like, I think that's, and that's where, basically you need a biologist to go in. They're looking for at-risk species, at-risk ecological communities, sensitive ecosystems. And as the municipality, they should be, setting the example for the developers that they're doing best practices and having that kind of surveying done. And also determining where does it need to be a raised boardwalk as opposed to a gravel trail, or where should it be less than 3? I don't think it should say that it's a minimum 3 meter wide trail. That should be determined based on the conditions.
Yeah, it's all based
Oh, sorry.
on what's contextually appropriate. And that ethos should be guiding the whole thing.
That should be at the front of
Absolutely,
this,
so
at
that
the
it's,
front
so
end.
you're not confined by standards that are too rigid, but it has to be loose enough that says you can't be, the broader, the.
It has to be flexible.
The sine qua nons obviously have to be protective of the context, I guess.
especially where there's natural value.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mark?
This actually brings up 2 points that I want to bring up, because the environment is only really addressed in one small line in 14.1 on page 59. Environmentally sensitive areas, it's really the only time that the environment is talked about. Creek crossings and works in environmentally sensitive areas shall be in accordance with requirements approved by the municipality
And that's not the case, it's provincially.
Right.
And who's saying where the environmentally sensitive areas are?
Right.
That they already have to be mapped and
Well, we have to be a little,
archived?
I mean, Islands Trust has funding, but we usually do this through volunteers or the Conservancy and things like that, otherwise we couldn't afford to do them. Go ahead.
So one of the things in the Land Act that governs subdivisions, one of the things the approving officer has to consider is if a subdivision is harmful for the environment. So an approving officer can independently require environmental, whether or not that was done as part of the rezoning or not. That's part of their realm in essence. So what this more lays out is like where they're going to be, these are your standards for doing it. But the idea being that that's actually a separate step in it that isn't covered in the, because this is saying if you're going to put in a road, this is how wide your road is going to be, this is how you're going to build it.
But the approving officer
But
would
the
be the
appro-
one
yeah.
who might decide whether it could go there or not.
Yeah, and so some of that where it talks about footpaths and then bicycle paths, so 8.4 and 8.6, just in this case, it talks about they're constructing locations indicated by, you know, our plans or by the municipality. So there's some sense that like, that's where this ties into our other plans. So we have a Parks Master Plan that says these are where we want trails. As part of the Parks Plan, we've decided this. And then at time of subdivision, then it's for the approving officer to say, okay, we've done the environmental too, and this is where we connect the
Okay.
piece.
Bonnie first?
I just wanted to ask, and just so I'm clear, because, so the rezoning takes place, council weighs in on that. Now, a lot of times on Bowen, status quo is then people will just go in and start to do all these things, not roads necessarily,
Yeah.
but start to
Yeah.
put in culverts and alter the land prior to subdivision. So, I don't know, because this
Yeah.
is the last step, so it's sort of like after the fact, but this would be their guide, because the approving officer could then see that because often a lot of this stuff is done before the subdivision
So I
takes
guess
place.
there's a couple things. So one is, this would be like, this is a guide to say, so people can see if they're gonna subdivide, they can look at it and say, okay, what standards is the municipality gonna expect? So it's sort of there and it's public and it's, you know, we've done it and we're not just sort of making it up for each one and be like, your road's gonna be like this and your road, right? But it's really clear for everybody. Some municipalities have development permits that are at subdivision stage. They say before you can do anything related to your subdivision, you need a development permit. And that's how they sort of double capture it. We don't, so in a sense, if you're not in a development permit area, right, if you own land that you want to subdivide, you could go in and you could build trails and you could do whatever you want, but you're sort of at the risk that when you come to apply for your subdivision, you say, look, I built this trail. The approving officer could say either, well, you built it, but it's not where our trail plan is, so either we're not gonna take it, or you need to build it over here where you're supposed, you know, where our plan calls for it, so you're just gonna have to do it again and repair it.
So you could go and ask, you could say to a proponent, like, we don't want this. Like, this doesn't comply with what we're looking for.
Yeah, and that's partly, like, part of what this is, and then also those interlapping plans are to give the approving officer essentially the authority and the backup to say, this is what we want. So that's why it's great to have like the parks plan and the transportation plan and stuff, because then it's not the approving officers are saying, well, I think there should be a trail that comes across here, so you need to build me a trail that goes across here, and we're gonna do it.
Or it
But
won't
you-
be the OCP
Yeah,
version,
exactly.
Schedule
Yeah.
C, it'll be the more detailed.
Yeah, and so we can say, look, we did this whole parks plan, it took, you know, multiple years, we did all these workshops and everything, and this was a community priority, was this trail across here, so we're not gonna approve a subdivision unless you build us a trail where we've asked for it.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in for
Yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
because we're talking about timing, like what could be
Mhm.
done before.
Yeah.
One thing that's come up in this committee several times over the years
Yeah.
has been, should we ask for all trails to be built before the houses are built?
Mhm.
So that you're not coming
Yeah.
around 10 years later trying to put in the paths,
Yeah.
whatever they are. And is that something that could be part of this?
It's not really something that's part of it.
It would be up to the approving
I mean, I
officer, right?
agree, you know, the cases
Yeah.
that Bonnie and I have worked with, we say, wouldn't that be a whole lot easier if there was a trail there now?
Right, but it's not part of this.
But it's
Okay.
not part of this.
That's fine,
If-
okay.
But could it be part of this? Is there a reason why it couldn't be?
Because it's not, essentially it's not a listed like works and service, so it's like we can require you to put in the road, because all legislation is very road heavy, it's very
Yeah.
concerned about roads. We can require that you put in the water, or put no builds until you put in the water. But some of the other pieces,
You can't.
you can't.
You can't schedule them or
But, I mean, you
Okay.
can't in here, but the approving officer can require
Yeah.
as part of it and say, not only do I want the trail right away, but I want the trail built.
Okay, first Bonnie, then Mark.
And Daniel, I know we've talked
Yeah.
about this before, but I just wanted to bring up, just for the group too, that under the sediment control plan, and it probably other
Which
places.
page are you on?
I'm on page 65, 139,
Mhm.
sediment control plan, but I'm gonna be referring to the definitions. So this is something that's in our land use bylaw as well, about water courses. And now, so it says here that the sediment control plan, the proposed drainage system, blah, 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 blah. If stormwater is discharged in a surface drainage system to the ocean or to a water course, blah, 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 blah. So then you go to the definition at the front on page 34 of 139. And the definition of water course, and this is, I think this is similar to our land use bylaw definition, means that a natural man-made depression with well-defined banks and a bed of 0.6 meters or more below the surrounding land, serving to give direction to a current of water at least 6 months out of the year for having a drainage area. Now, I find this 6-month thing
Yeah.
extremely problematic because that is so subjective, and even a qualified environmental professional from Bowen Island may have intimate knowledge of that stream or that and say, oh no, you know, if they're working for the proponent, let's just say, could say, oh no, this isn't, it's not wetted for 6 months out of the year. But really, it is serving a purpose, whether it's for 1 month out of the year, 2 weeks out of the year, it's serving a purpose. And whatever's in that water course at the time is going to be washed down into, perhaps, potentially, into the ocean or into a fish-bearing creek or whatever. So I just think that that definition is extremely problematic.
What page is it, Bonnie? Sorry.
This is on page 34 of 139, the water course definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I agree with that because, partly because I've been to a number of climate change workshops lately. And one of the things that's common for the lower mainland now is we've got a summer drought that lasts 7 months instead of the 6 months it used to last. So, you know, this is changing. And I wonder if it shouldn't be, you know, can we say 3 months of the year? Is that something we could?
Or just, I mean, do you have to have it qualified like that? The 6 months is extremely problematic.
I mean, I think that's probably just a standard
Yeah.
water course definition. That's why it cropped up both in this
Yeah,
drafted
and
by
it's in
the
our
consultants
land
and in our land use bylaw. Having said that, I was sort of looking at this, I'm not quite sure even what this 3.1
Yeah.
would be telling you to do, because it says, proposed drainage system must be designed to provide adequate control of sediments, which sounds good. And then it says, if stormwater is
Right.
discharged
Yeah.
into a water course or the adjacent land,
It's not a complete sentence.
but it doesn't say anything. If it goes into a water course, you do something.
Yes.
Or
So it's a little
just, it's a little,
missing something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Looks
You
like
kind of-
it's
you keep
missing.
reading and you're
I'll
like,
take that one off now.
And then sometimes too, what I find is these plans, these sediment control plans, or stormwater management plans, et cetera, are kind of done before some of the land alterations, i.e. blasting, which then really can change the pattern of runoff.
Right. And that, I mean, that's sort of like, that should be captured, because that's the whole point of it, is it's,
Yeah.
you're supposed to say we're not altering the runoff
Yeah.
from what is undeveloped to what will be post-development and all, like, land alteration. Yeah.
But I would say that that definition, and if we are going to be looking at land use changes to definitions, that
Yeah.
I think there's probably some better definitions of water course out there now.
Yeah.
It's
And
interesting.
well-defined banks.
Yeah, I know what's
That's
about-
not
what's about-
well-defined.
Yeah. I can tell there's the people who have to deal with this on the ground. in the
Yeah.
room. Yes.
And 0.6 meters depth, and,
Yeah, and excludes a constructed ditch, whereas really
Well,
ditches, constructed ditches are amazing habitat. I was in the Fraser Valley and we were looking at a restoration of a constructed, of a ditch. And we hear this, we look over and there are all these salmon had come up and
Yeah.
in the ditch.
they're in the ditch,
if we
right?
build it, they will come.
Exactly. So, you know, really good habitat, and to exclude,
Yeah,
to say that a ditch is excluded from the watercourse definition.
yeah.
Well,
And
and ditches
doesn't-
aren't because they're applicable.
Well,
if they're tributaries
so
too,
they're
right?
putting a
So-
30-kilometer trail in at Pacific Rim National Park, Tofino, and they're coming up to these areas where it's the highway ditch, but they're amphibian
Mhm.
breeding
Yeah.
ponds, like, and so they have to, you know, move the trail and not locate it in a man-made, created
Yeah.
ditch.
And this gets back to the point of your stormwater system acts as a greenway, acts as a
Yeah.
natural system.
And
It does,
wildlife
it does,
habitat.
it does what you
Has
want it to
habitat,
do.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
cheaper and it provides habitat.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the Gibson's example and the advice that I'm gonna try and get from Stevens, who ran that workshop, that's who that guy was, may help us with some of these definitions and things, and some of these issues, particularly around climate change. For example, I want to look at 10.6 2C. So I think somewhere,
What page is that, Sarah?
well, I can't, I took my notes down on a little piece of paper, so I'm sorry I didn't have the paper copy.
Rainfall intensity, 10.6.
Yes.
Okay, it's page 73 of
And then the
139.
top
Okay.
of 74, I think is where she is.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it says rainfall intensity, you know, it tells you how to determine it using the IDF curve. So an equation based on the calculated time of concentration. And then number 2, on the top of the next page is the part I wanted you to look at. Climate change is predicted to influence rainfall pattern distribution. And yeah, so this is good. This is their, as far as I can remember from asking them count in that committee of the whole, this is the one climate change mentioned in the document. Although I haven't searched it all. Design engineers can address it by using these 3 methods. And I just wanted to refer to C, which is this legislative flood assessments in a changing climate in BC. There are at least 2 more recent documents. The one I referred you guys to with the water treatment plant.
Metro
That,
Vancouver?
yeah, well, one of them is for, one of them is for Metro Vancouver, and one of them is for the Southern Gulf Islands. But because for Victoria and the Southern Gulf Islands. But because, anyway, they each have their pros and cons, and if you refer to that report that I wrote about the water treatment plant, where I said the planners refer these documents to staff for the future design of the water treatment plant, I'll send it to you again.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Now I've got a to-do thing there, Steph.
Action item.
Okay, Sue Ellen will send Daniel her report about climate change projection with regard to the water treatment plant. And then I'll know what it is, and I'll send that to you. Because there's at least 2 more reports that are going to be more useful to us than this legislative flood assessments, I think. Because it has all kinds of climate change, things that will change, like the rate at which the water will flow off the slopes due to the intensity and the sediments that will come and all that.
And just on this topic, 6.1, the table C10, just on page 44, is design frequencies, like you have to design conveyance systems for a 1 to 10 year, or 1 in 10 year design, 1 in 25 year. Like, how old are those numbers? I'm just wondering, like, are we getting more significant rain events
Right.
now? And we need to design things?
Mhm.
So-
1 in
so-
100 years
Yeah,
is not realistic
is not,
anymore.
like-
It's not
Yeah, so I mean,
frequent.
what the climate change is, you have to adjust for it by the factor. So either
Okay.
you pick A, the simplest, and you'd say it's 15% more than I would have to have done before. So I don't know how that relates to 1 in 10 versus it's 15%. I don't know.
They look pretty,
But
pretty
that's
round.
essentially what the climate change piece is supposed to do, is say, we know it's changing, and either you can add a safety factor, or you can use more detailed methods of trying to
Okay,
adjust.
that's what
climate change.
that,
So
what
that's
we were
it's
talking
trying to
about, that's what, okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
But so much of this is runoff analysis and things like that, and I go, we don't want it to run off.
Right.
That's all good.
On site.
Anyway, those were most of my comments. Has anybody got more? Mark?
So throughout the document, there's a lot of references to the approving officer consulting with design engineers, professional engineers, and the superintendent of public works. I think in a lot of these cases, I don't see anywhere where the manager of parks and environment started to create more work for you, but it seems a lot of what we've been discussing could be captured by involving the manager of parks and environment in the process.
Especially
Because
since
when
she
you
does
have,
bylaws.
it's only, as I go back to unified lens or union
Right.
lens
Mhm.
is not how we work today in our world.
Right.
Decisions or solutions to problems are not solved through union lens
Yeah.
analysis. I believe, that's my personal opinion.
You have a professional engineer who has spent their career and education on learning pipe sizes and 1 in 100-year rate events. And fair enough, they don't know about bioswales. But to have another point of view, another perspective, and to involve the environmental aspect in the decision-making process and the approval process, I think would be helpful.
I mean, I know, because we have to decide who was gonna decide all the different things. So public works is generally anything that is, it's like a lot of the water and the sewer stuff in terms of taking over the pipes. But then throughout, generally, it's like approving officer. I don't think it refers to the planner or planning department
No, it doesn't.
throughout either, right? And so the idea is the approving officer, as part of their, like professional mandate, is to consult with the municipality as part of it. So
Right.
even, a couple things we're talking about, like trail locations and stuff, says, okay, where the municipality says or municipal plans say, but generally it's the approving officer, and it's sort of implied or implicit that as part of the approving officer's decision-making,
She's gonna consult
that they're
with staff.
referring,
But there's actually language, like in the stormwater management, there's a line that says the approving officer has to certify a stormwater management plan after consulting with the superintendent of public works.
Yeah.
So I would include the manager of parks and environment in that she would have to, like, it'd actually be written in there that the approving officer has to consult with the manager of parks and environment.
That's the decision.
Or applicable staff. Staff, because staff, well, that's not plural necessarily, is it? But I just,
Rather than being restricted, what you're saying is you don't want it to restrict it to just consult this one type of person, type of staff person.
Well, I think in a, like, if for stormwater management, you should have someone who is a PN who has been trained in the use of natural systems, and they're out there. And that should be involved in the design and the testing of the compliance and the whole deal. But at the end of the day, when approval has to come down and the approving officer has to consult with the superintendent of public works, they should also have to consult with the manager of the environment for the
Okay,
municipality.
I think we've got your point. We've got that captured.
Yeah.
Steph, great. And then anybody else before we leave it, because I want to move on.
I'm just wondering whether having something that sets the context, it seems to me that one of all the things we're talking about here is that we need this document needs to have the overall tone change to sort of building on what you were saying, Mark, about and Bonnie, about the that robust solutions, the data is coming in, that robust solutions for managing these sorts of things come from multidisciplinary lens. And that's what we want to aim for, is to have a robust, long-lasting, resilient results. So how do we get that? We get that by not looking at things in a narrow way, but we consult.
An
Integrated,
interdisciplinary
yes, approach. So I wonder, is it possible to add something at the beginning of the document, sort of making that statement, and that natural systems are always preferred, and maybe I missed it, but
Yeah, I think we should be progressive,
Yeah.
Not, you know,
And it's
we're
the
not
thing,
just
it's-
any
Because this is gonna matter, I mean, this is really gonna make a big difference.
Yeah.
This is one of the most important documents we will ever see, I think.
Is that something, where, you know, could go in here somewhere?
Yeah.
Purpose of the bylaw, definitions, severance, compliance, duty of care, incorporation.
Well,
Yeah, it doesn't sort of have a guiding principles or something like that, right?
well, I think it might fit into the whereas, right, part.
Which page are you on?
That's page 31 of 139. In the very beginning, it says, whereas council may by bylaw regulate.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is where there could be something where it says that what we were just talking about.
Multidisciplinary, integrated approach.
Yeah, and then
Favoring natural.
Based on natural systems?
are they?
Favoring.
Well, I mean, that's what they're saying now, like, I know on the east coast of the States, there's certain places where, this is more around hardened infrastructure on shorelines, but you have to prove to us that actually a living shoreline or a nature-based solution does not work.
Yeah.
And if that does not work, then we'll consider some of these other things, but,
I like it.
yeah, well, because, yeah. Yeah.
Because it does work.
I mean, the data's really coming in, so that these, I mean, totally makes sense. And they can be engineered, it doesn't mean that as you were saying, it's not like we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah,
So,
it's not just a system where you just dig a hole and like let things, I mean, there's procedures and
yeah,
designs that
there's
have
the
to happen,
science
for
and the
sure.
designs, yeah, so,
Or
can we?
Or even maybe a combination of natural and engineered solutions,
Yeah.
just, you know, something to them.
Well, I mean, I think for the most part, we're saying that the preferred choice is the nature-based solution, and that, you know, we recognize there's times when that doesn't work usually because there's not room for something like that, like physically you can't do it, but.
I like your language of prove to us that the natural system doesn't work, and then, like, that's,
See, you had good words too, Marks, earlier. You said, well, they can be a professional engineer if they have expertise in. You just had some good word there. If it comes to you, let me know.
Nature-based solutions or
I've never
natural
seen that.
natural
systems.
systems.
Maybe that's what it was.
I've got so many good words.
Yeah.
I just can't pull it
He's
out.
got the good words.
Also, DG, if you have some, like some recent studies or some overview studies that that show that this is the new way coming in,
Right,
if you have a couple of references that
okay,
you've come across, that would be great if you could send them
right.
to
As
us
an action item?
and to Daniel. Yeah.
And I recently did a wetland course, and I know someone who has installed a stormwater wetland over in Duncan. So I'm hoping to get over and have a look at that and get some information from her about it.
Mhm.
See how that works.
Sure, any of this stuff. What's the timeline on this one, Daniel?
It came to council in end of October.
Yeah.
It got referred to Parks and Trails, to BIMTAC, and to the committee we didn't form, whatever it was.
Yes.
Yes, Improved Services Task Force or something, that,
Oh, that
but
we
nobody
don't have
applied
a-
to our ads,
yeah.
so it never got formed.
Yeah.
So I imagine, I don't know if we're trying to bring it back in January or February.
Right. So it might be something that we would want to get our remarks, any extra remarks.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have a meeting.
Actually, having said that, I know we have like a workshop booked end of January with people, so it wouldn't be till
Wouldn't be before
February.
that. Oh, good.
Yeah.
So so bring any future ideas to the next meeting.
Sure.
And maybe this will serve as a way to get into it. How about that?
Yeah, my sense is that it needs a lot of work,
Yes.
actually,
Yeah.
like a
With
lot of work.
developers.
With the developers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
And
think,
part
Well,
to be
Bonnie
like,
was saying that
this
it's
is
more
changes
a template that's.
Well, it's probably, I mean, I don't know that for sure, but it's sort of, I think it's probably fairly standard. I mean, I think that they have done a
Mhm.
fairly good job in trying to try to bonize it.
So I
a
know,
little bit.
yeah, a lot of like the standards, especially like the road and that little
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
came from a previous, like somebody previously, a consultant previously did a whole bunch of our standards,
Yeah,
5 years ago or 10 years ago or
10
something,
years.
and then it sat, and then
Yeah.
then the urban systems came
Brent.
and did it.
is it Brent?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then urban systems then took it and they took some stuff and they sort of, the complete package, but yeah.
As it was described to us at the committee of the whole, this would be our first one, and it was kind of legitimizing current practice.
To some, yeah.
So the question is, we need it. This is me speaking from a council perspective, we need it. But me speaking with my Parks, Trails, and Greenways hat on, I'm going, do we really want to cement in all the
Exactly.
Well, and the thing is,
Right.
just knowing Whitbourne municipality, we don't have a lot of resources. So when we have a bylaw, I mean, we're working with bylaws that are from pre-incorporation or time of incorporation.
They don't get
and
updated.
It's really tricky to update them. So,
Right.
yeah, so
So
it's
are you saying it's better to get it right the first time?
Yeah.
because it might be many,
Right, might be a
years.
long time, yeah.
But,
Because of lack of
but it
resources,
sounds
yeah.
like Daniel has, it sounds like there'll be input from the developers, input from the committees, and,
Yeah, so let's, at the next meeting, I'll put it on the agenda again, and we can, by that point, maybe, Bonnie, can you just send around the link to whichever Gibson's document you think would be best? And that's another action item, and then we can all look at these things before the next meeting, and see if we can give some more specific or general, whatever we want, comments we want to pass along to Daniel. Because it sounds like he's going to get other kinds of comments too, and then, which makes sense. And then you'll be finding the balance and what's going to work for us in our island municipality. So,
And I know some of it, so this bylaw, it hasn't received readings from council, which is introduced, so we have to go, when we go back to council readings, I don't know if we'll do a second round of
consultation
at
again.
that point or not. Yeah, but that could well, I mean, ultimately that's council's choice, but I think we'll have to see even how many comments we have and how we splice it all back together and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because it has been started
It's
and
a
dropped
huge,
before.
yeah.
you know.
It's big in it, like when I started here 2.5 years ago, I think my first week I had a meeting about this, and that was being led by Al and Kristen. Neither of whom are here, so it's good.
Yeah,
So just for process, are any of these edits are going to be made before it goes back to council, or they will be made on council's direction?
I think staff will have made edits,
Okay.
and then we may have them, because it hasn't even received readings yet. So I guess
Yeah.
probably we'll bring
so
it
this
like
is
a red
this is
line.
pretty early, so I
Yeah.
think we can just pass these comments on to staff.
Yeah.
I have one more comment,
Oh.
and then I'm
Okay.
done, and then I swear to God.
Okay?
At first I wanted to say, like, a lot of the points that I had up have already come up. That's awesome, I think. But we have never talked about invasive species, which can come up once in this document. And under the environmental auspice, I think, environmental species and the spread of the species that are on site and not moving new invasive species onto the site needs to be addressed as
it
well.
has best management practices a lot, BMPs, and BMPs is kind of like a really, when I see that, I get nervous, because what BMPs, but yeah, I don't know if it's really, this is the place for, I
think
think
it
it
is.
is, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I
Some
think.
best management practices, because we know that,
Building roads and trails and.
It's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
soil
Yeah.
deposition, yeah,
Yeah.
the gravel, the seeds, and where did that gravel come from?
well, and the base, right, the dirt, so this is something that Metro Vancouver, some of the regional planning, I think the Claudia's husband, is in the environmental subcommittee, and it's a big deal with Phil, right? With Phil and the finance are coming and all sorts of things coming with Phil, and so, yeah, when you have the basis for roads and even in gravel, right?
This is why it's sometimes better to use bark mulch. But anyway, okay, so thanks, everybody. That's a great comment to end on, is right, we've got to remember the invasive species. And I'll put the subdivision and services bylaw on the next agenda too, so you might get some more comments about this. You'll get a taste, you've got a taste of what we're thinking about. And
We always
thank you
have
very much.
ideas.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Daniel. Appreciate your patience.
Okay, so, I think that's most of the bigger, harder stuff, and you can skip through this now. That was 4.1 and 4.2. We're on to the business arriving now, 5.1. So here, I just wanted to do a little report. I'm gonna keep this shorter because now we're at 8:30. There's a few links that you've got there on your, I gotta pick it up on here now. On your agenda, partly because I think we had them on another agenda, but anyway, the draft regional conservation plan is from the Islands Trust. And that link, if I can find it here. Okay, anyway, I'm just going to say that it has some Bowen-specific info at the back and goals that the Islands Trust proposes for conservation. And I won't go into my files and dig them out here because I thought I had it ready to go. Oh, wait, maybe I do. 1 second. I know where to put it. Under upcoming Islands Trust. No. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll bring it to the next meeting. What it is I thought it might be relevant to the Parks Plan, Bonnie, because it has specific Bowen conservation objectives and specific Bowen measurements of this and that kinds of sensitive ecosystems in it, and it's new, so you wouldn't have seen that one yet. So I'll just refer that to Bonnie for the Parks Plan and any of that kind of planning. But partly just to let you guys know that info's out there if anybody wanted it. And then the other links there, Kate Emmings is the ecosystem manager for the Islands Trust Fund, which is the group that owns, for example, Singing Woods Nature Reserve and our other nature reserves on the island. And so she's the kind of expert scientist, and her report is in there. And Jennifer Eliason is her boss, the manager of Islands Trust Fund. So it's just a little bit about the conservation side of things, the sensitive ecosystem management, the eelgrass, and some of the more recent things that they've been looking into. And in the appendix of the draft regional conservation plan, you'll find a few pages about both. And council passed that. We supported it, endorsed it, whatever. What did we do to it?
Just received it,
We
actually.
just received it, yeah, that's right. They didn't, I don't think they needed our endorsement, that they were gonna do it anyway, but that we just received it. Okay. And then, so skipping past that, just letting you know that there's info there if you want it. 5.2, Parks Plan, Claudia, I think later we've got some updates and Bonnie was gonna update us on it anyway. Do we?
Oh, well,
No, we don't. Okay,
okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a concern. We, at the Committee of the Whole, the presentation was excellent. Near the end, a couple of councillors had some objections to items within the plan. And in particular, Alison Morris had a number of more serious objections. And the way it was left was that those were going to be addressed. You were going to work with her a bit on what those were. So my concern, and I don't know if I'm too late with this, is that there'll be changes made to the document, maybe weakening the document based on some individual councillors' points. And then when it comes back to council, they've already quite thoroughly gone through it. Are they gonna go through it and notice what changes there are? So I was hoping that there could be a document of changes, to show, you know, was taken out, this wording was significantly altered. I mean, not typos, obviously, but where there are,
Yeah, definitely, because
change
council will
document.
want to see that. So,
Good.
so where I'm at with it, Claudia, and, you know, sitting down with Councillor Morris after, she's been really helpful, actually, and so she's giving me some edits. And when we get right down to it, I think by softening language and clarifying some things, that I don't think the context or the information within the plan will change too dramatically. So, yeah, although she hasn't got to the second part of the document yet, which is the natural capital section, etc. So, but definitely because council is going to want to see what we've changed, and they want to make sure that their points have been incorporated. Now, I will change things, but if there is a dramatic difference, I will not change it, and I'll have to keep it consistent with what we heard through the public consultation, and bring that forward to council. And there's a few members of council, and you know, so I'll be, you know, we'll be discussing it, but I can't make every single change because I have to be sort of okay, can I soften this with language? Can we just kind of tweak it a bit to sort of make it okay for everybody? But where we can't, then I have to go back. I have to go back to the process. So it's a juggling act, but and so right now I'm just got so many other things, but I am doing edits slowly. I'm making a list of the changes. Then I'm going to send it once I've got it all edited. I'm going to send it to the working group to look at, and at that point, you know, there might be some typos, hopefully, not some big major things. And so then just you can have one final look. And you'll see, well, I'm just going to do some edits at that time, just because I know that Swan's been very busy. So, and then that will be the document that I will then take forward to a committee of the whole, a second committee of the whole. And hopefully, at that committee of the whole, hopefully, the committee of the whole will recommend that council adopt the plan. And then it would have to go to council, or then I think actually they were going to probably, I have to check, because it needs to go to BIMTAC, it has to go to a few committees, the rec commission, so probably after the edits, maybe, I don't know the order of things. It will go to the committees, whether it's after the committee of the whole or before the committee of the whole. And then I'm hoping final adoption by February at some point.
See,
So that's sort of the process.
it's a fascinating time for me. I'm going, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I've got this big fat subdivision servicing file.
Fascinating, or?
Well, yeah, because it relates to the Parks and Trails plan, and it also relates to the integrated transportation plan. And wouldn't it be nice if all of them meshed together and they didn't conflict or go sweeping past each other? So this is what I'm kind of going, when will I carve out that week? So, but anyway, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
And, but I think, yeah, that's
Great.
good.
It's good to
And
hear.
if we hear places where there's sort of conflicting visions, then council will want to know.
And probably that could be on a committee of the whole agenda, so that would be a public document with the changes of
That'd
happened.
be great, yeah.
And you said you would give the changes to the working group? What about this committee?
Do you want to join the working group for the Parks plan? Are you not on that?
I'm not on that,
Well,
Can
maybe
I?
you could talk to Bonnie afterwards.
It's just a subgroup of this group.
Yeah,
Okay.
it may have started before you joined us.
no. Oh,
did.
yeah,
Oh,
I totally did, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so just talk to Bonnie.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. Keeners unite. No, I just mean, if somebody's interested.
Could that be our slogan?
No, that's my,
That's your slogan.
It's
20, that's my 20
What do
minutes
you
to
mean that's
9, I
impossible?
gotta get
It's the
going.
opposite. It's so opposite. They're so the same meaning. It almost
Yeah.
opposite
Can you just
itself.
give me a
They totally unite.
All the time.
Keenly.
Okay. Bonnie, 6.1, Mount Gardner Skid Trail Connector.
Just a really, just a quick update. So we're working with the Crown province, with Metro Vancouver. There was this money set aside, this $10,000 for Hikers Trail, way back when, like quite a few years ago, 2008 or something. That was set aside for the Hikers Trail.
Oh no, I'll send you some info on that. I think it might be different, but anyway, I'll check.
Yeah, so we're working with Metro and Mount Gardner, or the province, to do this neat little connector. So from the picnic area at Clarny, up through the forest to the skid trail. So that right now people, they have to walk up Hikers Trail Road and then go in that way. So now this is just a beautiful little connector that goes through the woods. So people,
Can you show us where that is? Because I had somebody stop me on the trail to talk about it.
Does that go through the David Otter Preserve?
No, we don't. We go
Clarny.
quite far away from
So
it.
here's the Clarny Lake picnic area.
It's in that, yeah.
So that's the picnic area. So it goes, where am I now?
Here's David Otter.
So it goes up, so that's the picnic area, right?
Through the old bike park?
Yeah,
Mm.
so then, and what's this here?
That's
That's
the road.
Oh, that's,
road? No, that's the
This
trail.
is
The
the road.
ridge is the
Okay,
road.
okay, so I go
Yeah.
across,
Yeah.
we go across the
So this is
road
like,
and up through here, and up to here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the person I talked to today was saying, why didn't you come right up from where the, apparently there's still some mountain bike people that had some really high jumps in there, and come over and connect to Hikers Trail Road instead of going through the wetland or something. But
Well,
maybe it's because they have to go this.
There's no wetlands.
There's no
in
wetland,
here.
that's all.
Yeah, there's no
It's pretty
wetlands.
It's actually
Yeah.
kind of nice
Well,
country.
it's just a beautiful, mature
Beautiful
sword
slope,
fern,
right?
and
Yeah.
it's a gentle graze,
Yeah.
so it's, horses could do that.
oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense coming from a
Horses
picnic
can do
area.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you just have to stay on the trails and go up there.
Okay. And I'll just check in my files, Bonnie, because I think that was something that was, I don't know what it is, but I'll check.
Yeah, so
I thought it was for something
we're
else.
just working with them, trying to organize, it's not on municipal property, but just working together to try to.
And that is to try to solve what problem, or is it just to
So,
add to it?
it's because the Hikers Trail Road, there's some, it's just not a nice sort of entrance to, the Crown lands.
Right.
And there's, people, the hikers have to go up the road, and then there's, people living there, and there's parking issues, and there's people scrapping cars, and it's just not a nice entrance to the Crown lands.
Through the little subdivision.
So will there be a parking issue though? If people are hiking up Mount Gardner and parking at the picnic tables?
Could be.
There is already.
But they could also, yeah, it could be. But then they also could walk so much better from the coast. It's all sort of flat road, so I don't know.
So- You know, the interesting thing is that I think that part where the old bike park was, is Crippen Regional Park.
Yeah,
So
so
there's
there's up
already
behind that, that's where you go through the old.
So you go
bike park.
through part
A
of
little piece
Griffin
of
Regional Park, right,
Yes.
and then onto Crown
Okay,
Lake.
gotcha, sorry. Christine?
Is this what this is proposed to talk about? So you're not two separate things, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that bit, so.
Okay, good. All right, and an action item is for me to send Hikers Trail Fund info to Bonnie. Please. Thank you. And Fairy Fan, I just wanted to let the group know from the AGM of the Bonan Conservancy that I was at, and some of you were at, that Fairy Fen, which Terry is, doesn't show on this map, but
Oh, she
it's
knows
a,
it.
the Bonan Conservancy is the manager, the local manager of several of the island's top fund reserves on Bowen Island. And they have some funding and they've got going, they're going to put a little viewing platform to help protect, so people can get down to the fen, but not damage the fen. So some interpretive signs and things like that. So that is on the books for this year, I think. And then, so that's 6.2, check. 6.3, oh, this is Ocean Watch. So Bonnie and I just wanted to fill you in that Bonnie and I are both on How Sound, Ocean Watch How Sound working group. And this is a working group of communities in the Howe Sound area. So with Gambier, for example, one of the chairs and the other co-chairs, a councillor from Squamish. And anyway, there's a whole bunch of us, and we're working towards implementing some of the action items that are in this Ocean Watch, which is a huge big document online. But it has risks of coastal development and key issues and action plan. And then it actually has actions to do. And so this is what the working group is focusing on. We're trying to actually take the Howe Sound Forum, which has been in networking and information sharing about Howe Sound, into doing actions. So we've, different communities now, for example, are contributing funds to create a marine guide, which is sort of a GIS mapping system for all these impacts, these coastal development kind of impacts and things that are happening in Howe Sound that can be used by managers or people planning for healthy cetaceans and that kind of thing. I'll go a little faster. And,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. I know it's a long day. I'm working. And anyway, we're starting to do that, and so the Bowen municipality has chipped in a little bit of money towards that. We've got other funders and partners and whatever, and we also passed a resolution. Council passed a resolution supporting glass sponge reef protection in Howe Sound, way down underwater. But these are those dinosaur reefs, and so that was just letting you know. 6.4, Phil's not here. Anybody else want to report from BITS? Are you on that, Christine?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just, okay, not
I
gonna,
know nothing.
all right, nothing particularly to report.
Are you with this?
Not yet.
No.
Okay, all right. We'll just leave that till next time. I just put these on in the hopes. Now we've got two more things. Disc golf and wildfire data. Wildfire data I can easily take over to another meeting. It's an information thing that I can pull out. What about the disc golf, Bonnie?
So there's a proponent for disc golf on the island. I mean, more than one, but Sam Nozak is, he's an avid disc golfer, and he's wanting to put in a 9, maybe an 18, I'm not sure, course, disc golf course. And
These are frisbees that hit holes and fall into little baskets.
yeah, and there's been kind of impromptu. I mean, there's a couple of them, and there's yeah. But so he is looking around for some potential sites, and he would like us to join him at a couple potential sites for walkabout and the Rec Commission. He's already presented to the Rec Commission. The Rec Commission is so 100% behind him, and it sort of fits with trying to activate some of our parks, our municipal parks, and have them utilized.
I think he actually came here years ago.
It was a long time ago, and then it sort of died down for a while.
Right.
So that's just a walkabout. So the Rec Commission's requesting that we join them, and Sam is too.
Mm-hmm.
The site's yet to be determined, so could we send
This
it
would be one of those walkabouts.
probably in late January or
Yeah.
February, because Sam has to find a couple of spots that are conducive to the disc golf.
Good. So that's great. Then we've got like 3 walkabouts in January, weather allowing. One of them we set up last time for Lee Creek, and that's the one with Jeremy. You're leading this one. So we're going to look at some of the special natural features of this piece of Crown land. Where
Yeah, basically just to assess its value as an area for future trails.
Right. Okay. And that's good. We're being proactive with
So what
that.
was the date on that Lee Creek one?
I think it's
The
January
6th.
6th.
6 to 9:30.
Yeah.
Where are you meeting for that, Jeremy?
Somewhere close by. There's very limited parking there. That's a good question. I'm not sure the extent to which you can park along the edge of the road. There's certainly one spot you might be able to get a couple of vehicles right close by.
Could probably park down on Seymour Bay Lane.
Oh, the other option would be, there's just up slope, there's a whole bunch of blasting, and there's sort of a road that goes off that's not being used. It's just a very crude thing, but you might be able
Maybe you
to
could
park
take
up
a
there.
photo or,
What about parking at the Seymour Bay Park and then carpooling
Carpooling
a
up?
couple of
Oh,
cars
that's
up?
another option. Sure.
yeah, let's do that.
We all know where it
Meet at
is.
Seymour Bay Park.
Yeah,
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
9:30, and then we'll gather there and we'll go up.
Do we think it's 1 hour, 3 hour, 5 hour,
Does it
excursion?
get lost or not?
I think we should say 2. It's hard to do more than,
Yeah, remember, it's a bushwalk, so it's manageable for us, but it's,
2 hours, let's say 2 hours, rain pants,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
There's a former trail there?
No,
Not yet?
there's no evidence of a trail or roads or
Or
anything.
like maybe you know one.
narrow.
I think I know one. If I'm in the right spot.
Well, not that I've run
Good.
into. There's one that crosses the corner of the property here. That's the Seymour Bay, the trail from Seymour Bay to Queen Charlotte Heights. It crosses this bit of Crown Land.
There's a
And
little tiny sign on a tree that says trail to.
it's down here? Oh, yeah, that's up here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's this part. And you're immediately aware when you're in the Crown Lands, because suddenly the forest is big.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're focusing on this.
Yeah, we're
is that right,
focusing on,
Jimmy?
just on
Oh,
this part, up to the ecological reserve. If we can just do a loop up.
Oh, yes,
and
yes, yeah, I live on the other side of that trail, and we did it one time, not supposed to being in the ecological reserve, and we came down that creek and ended up at Seymour.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this will be interesting.
There's
Yeah.
innumerable
Good.
possibilities in there.
Okay, and and Steph's gonna send around the doodle poll for, the Salal Road one that Daniel talked about at the beginning, and then also for the disc golf.
And just.
I'd really like to go on this Salal one if there's a wetland, but I'm away the 18th to the end of the month, so.
Okay,
I can't do Saturdays, so if we can all do Saturday, I'd like to do that one too.
okay,
Both of those that will be indicated on the poll in a great visual.
yeah, okay. And Claudia, you're away when?
18th
I
to
think yours is Saturday, so.
30th.
Okay.
Oh, is it?
I just wanted to say that I will throw the poll out and then send you an email.
It's actually not
And then I'm
too
out.
bad.
So
Okay.
you need to talk amongst yourselves from there,
Yeah.
because I'm not online on Saturdays or
Yeah,
it's not a council thing, so you just,
Right, you
if
get
you're
a
depending on me to find out
I-
where's Claudia, I'm not gonna be able to help you, so it's gonna be a disaster.
And I'm not
that's
telling.
why I'm writing it down, that's why I'm writing it down.
And once
Claudia's
that's
away.
done-
So if we
Saturday.
enter in the poll, who will look at the
So the doodle
result?
poll is brilliant, so
Oh,
you'll,
we
yeah,
We can all
see?
go back and look.
I
yeah,
see.
so you,
Okay.
I'll provide you with a link and you click your
Okay.
availability and then, you just check in a couple days later and see what everyone else
Right,
says.
okay.
Yeah.
Can you, when you send out the email, just give an idea of when people should participate by?
Oh, sure.
You know?
Deadline.
Well, because I found that, I do a lot of these events. We don't say, people, oh yeah, I'll get to it eventually, and then it's hard.
Right now.
It's hard to pick a date.
In the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then a timer.
Enter your availability.
Okay, anybody else here can't do Saturdays or can't do Sundays or something? Okay, good. Then thank you, and we'll look forward to the doodle poll, and otherwise have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you
Yeah.
January the 6th. When is our next meeting?
Oh, hold on.
It says on the agenda,
Yeah.
January 16th, a
When I
Tuesday,
provided,
7 PM.
I provided that, it's based on this year's schedule, but at that meeting, we'll need to be voting for chair and vice chair. Need to set the annual schedule, you're allowed to make changes if you want. I know it's working, but
Good.
it's a possibility, so this is just a suggested date.
Yeah. If anybody's interested in chair or vice chair before that date, let me know. and, because I'm quite happy. I have lots to do. And,
Leave her alone. She's a step up. She's
No,
no,
no.
busy.
well, I enjoy it too. This is a great committee. Okay, thank you, Terry. Terry, welcome aboard.
Yeah.
And, yeah, feel free to call us, talk to any of us if you're going, what happened?
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll see a little bit, but-
Who is that Steph carrying?
Oh, sure. I can tell you about that. It was, the Memorial Garden wanted it, and then they never gave us the